All right, a very random video, but I've just been thinking about this for like 5 minutes or something, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm gonna chit chat about this. So I'm chit chatting. Who knows if I'll put this on YouTube? Maybe, maybe not. Probably. Nobody's on there anyway. So what's the harm? Unless people start following me, then it's all bad. Anyway, getting to the point. I was thinking about conversational tactics and conversational strategies. A interesting little thing that people do is converse, and we want to have high quality conversations as opposed to boring, mundane conversations that you often have, 100 times a day. Okay, maybe not 100 times a day, 100 times in some period of time. Those kinds of conversations where it's, what do you do? Where do you go to school? What's your work? Oh, did you have a family? Oh, no. Oh, jeez, I shouldn't have asked that one. All that kind of stuff. And so I was thinking about it, and actually I wasn't thinking about it, just a memory popped into my mind and got me going down this rabbit hole. Basically, the memory was, I was in my cars with one friend that I was just kind of starting to get to know. We'd started like hanging out and stuff, but we were just getting to know each other. It was the beginning of a new friendship, and it was fantastic. And there's a lot of fun to that. But oftentimes in those situations, it gets a little, you got to get that ball rolling. You got to get some momentum going. And a lot of us, in order to get that momentum going, we try to memorize like certain questions that are going to get conversation rolling. So that's why we all kind of default to like, oh, what do you do? Oh, why did you choose to do that? That was a big one I did for like literally not years, like months, where it's like, why did you decide that? And the people will be like, I don't really know. And then conversation was over. I was like, fuck, I don't know where to go from here. Oh, what do you want to do with that? I don't really know. I'm like, God damn it. So an underlying strategy that people often talk about is, to shoot a lot of questions, and eventually their eyes are going to light up at something. They're like, and then start asking them questions about that. And that kind of gets the ball rolling. And that's good. That definitely works. There are tons of questions like that. And I think that's why I think when you're talking like strategy, conversational questions are kind of like a tactic, right? And learning how to identify when somebody's eyes light up over a topic, that's more like a strategy. Now, some tactics that I've learned recently that are really good include, let's see, there's one question. Okay, so one is like if you're talking about ideas and they express some idea that seems to be very dear to them, and it's kind of like philosophical or ideological in some sense, what you can do, or it's kind of value oriented, you can kind of hone in on their values, their beliefs. Once you can get into a conversation like that, one question that's really effective is asking them, what kind of experiences have you had that led you to that value? That'll pop them open like something that gets popped open. And then especially if they're talking in favor of one idea and against another idea, you can kind of move the conversation from a rational, intellectual level into a deeper, more emotional, Jesus Christ, into a deeper, I don't remember which direction this phone was, a deeper, more emotional level. And those are where like the really intense conversations come from, and those are the kind of conversations that people remember, that people want to go back to. And then on top of that, I think that when you talk about like rational ideas, those are useful, and like what kind of facts are there that support your idea. But a lot of that is kind of like, we're trying to cover up our biases in those conversations. And on top of that, it's like, there are all kinds of problems with the realm of the intellect. It's useful, but I think people overestimate its utility. And I think there's only so much to be learned from factual conversations of ideas, values, and beliefs. But when you really start to learn about how people develop these, or you really start to listen to how people develop their views, that's where your perspective starts to get broadened on the world and on life and on the way that society functions and the way that people's psychologies function, and most importantly, the way many ways that life can unfold. And then you kind of see the nuances and the complexities in their ideas, because ideas are complicated. And when you are articulating an idea, oftentimes you don't exactly get the real reasoning behind the idea across. I'm going to try to pop off with an example of this right now. Something that might fall in this category is something like a principle that somebody might live by. Like, I think you should not overvalue knowledge. Right now, a lot of us might be like, hey, what the fuck? You don't think that, you think that knowledge is overestimated and blah, 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 or the value of knowledge is overestimated. You don't think that knowledge is all that important. And they might start off by saying like, oh no, well, because of, and then construct some kind of argument against the high value of knowledge in society. And that's good, and you should start with that. But then when you start inquiring about their actual life experiences, you might find that they had some relationship with somebody who was stuck in the intellect, and because they were stuck in the intellect, they were unable to connect with their underlying emotions, and they were analyzing everything, and so they weren't able to be empathetic towards other people, and so they lost touch with this very important aspect of their life. You may have people, another interesting idea is like, you shouldn't enjoy your work. You know, some people might say that, oh, I think you should enjoy your work, and maybe they had a parent who, actually, let's go back to that first example. You shouldn't enjoy the work. Maybe they had a parent who was so passionate about their work that they kind of let their health slide, or they didn't have a balance in their life, and so they kind of missed out on other aspects of their life. And then this person went on and met somebody else who enjoyed their work, but it wasn't all that they cared about. It was something that was almost like a chore to them at times. And so instead, they invested more time and energy into their family, and they only generated wealth insofar as it was beneficial to the family. You can see these kinds of things with the way that people value money. Man, that's a fascinating area of conversation. And then you start to hear all of these stories, and it's these stories about people's lives that's going to broaden your perspective on reality. Anyway, so that's like a tactic. A couple of others that I was thinking about. One that's cool is like, if you're in conversation with somebody, I noticed this when I was conversing with an associate of mine, a very close associate, one we might call a friend, actually. And we started like kind of looking through my camera roll because I was looking for something that was related to conversation, and I was like finding all these videos. I was like, oh dude, look at this, I forgot about this. And they all had like a story behind it, so they kind of asked me like questions about them, and I was having so much fun in the conversation. And I was like, damn dude, like when you get somebody to kind of, and not everybody's going to be this way, but somebody who has a lot of pictures and videos of people that they care about or fun experiences that they've had, and you ask them about those, and you get them to kind of go through their camera roll and find like some pictures and some videos and tell you about them, that can really kind of open up the floodgates and get them going on all kinds of tangents. And then it just opens up lots of different potential conversational topics. So those are fun. Obviously with like the phone, that's something, if let's say you're like on a date with a girl, and you're like sitting next to each other, because you shouldn't be sitting across, you gotta sit next. You tell them, instead of like, oh yeah, I don't have a fucking stop sign here. Instead of telling them like, hey, you know, find a picture or a video on your phone right now. Instead, if there's a lull in the conversation, say you gotta go to the bathroom. This is a great opportunity if you gotta go to the bathroom, because that's always a tricky situation. Tell them like, hey, pull up a picture or a video on your phone that exemplifies who you were in high school, or something like that. Or find your favorite video of a family member if they've expressed that they enjoy their family. Another great conversational just like conversational topic is, who were you in high school? Ask them about like, what was high school you like? Because that opens up the floodgates towards like, what was the relationship with their family back then? How did their relationship with their family evolve since then? And then you can go into their habits, their hobbies, their, high school is kind of one of those periods in life where a lot of your values start to build and you kind of start to become your own person. And so you can kind of get back to the root of who they were, and it starts to touch on their childhood and touch on those early life experiences that are very core to who we are that we rarely get to actually think about. So that's one of my favorite topics. If you've just met somebody, say you're at a bar and you're just having a little chit chat, you're like, hey, let me buy you a drink, and you start chit chatting. You ask them like, hey, what's 3 favorite things in the whole world? Or 3 favorite activities, or top 3 memories from the last year and a half. Although that one you can pull out at any point. But that's like a really good starting place to start at with the conversation, because it gets them straight into their passions. And it's like, why fucking beat around the bush? You want to figure out what they're passionate about and what you care about, because if it's just somebody that you're gonna be friends with, it's like you want to figure out if you guys are going to enjoy hanging out. If it's somebody that you're going to want to date, it's like you're going to want to figure out, okay, is this somebody I want to make sacrifices for? And if their 3 most important things are things you don't like care about, then you should probably end the conversation and be like, all right, yeah, those are stupid, and fucking walk away. Or be a little bit more polite about it, but maybe depends on how many drinks you've had. Anyway, so those are some tactics. But I think there's a prerequisite to all of these. And this goes back to that first story I was talking about, which is the story where I had a new friend. We were in the car together. We were driving around. We were chit-chatting. We'd had some excellent conversations at this point. And we were like talking, and it was like, it was like small talk. It was good small talk. There wasn't much emotion behind it, but it was like, hey, what's been going on this past week? Oh, that's cool. You were doing that. Oh, how'd you feel about that? Ah, it kind of sucked. And I'm like, oh, well, that's too bad, man. Read anything cool lately? Yeah, this thing, blah, 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 blah. I was kind of trying to like angle my way into a deeper conversation. I've been in this situation. Hey, there's Mr. Sam. I've been in this situation quite a few times where I was trying to enter like deeper levels of conversation. I just like couldn't really get there. And, not every conversation is going to be, a life-changing conversation by any means. But to a point where there's more emotion behind it. And we were driving, and then her best friend got in, and, obviously she and her are super tight, and I was pretty close with this best friend of hers, and she gets in, and the whole dynamic changed. She was super excited, really like passionate about the things that she was talking about. She started going on a rant about some bullshit that her like parents did earlier, and it was like there's much less. It was like her inhibitions were gone, right? And that's one thing that happens when we drink. We go out, we have a couple of drinks, our inhibitions go away, and we just let loose. We talk about whatever the hell we want, and we don't worry about the consequences. And obviously you can have this when you're sober, and I think a part of if like sobriety is a value of yours, a part of achieving sobriety is being able to enter that kind of state on your own, where you're open and honest, and you're willing to just let loose on ideas and your inner thoughts, and kind of lower your inhibitions, not think so much before you speak. And then on top of that, be able to get other people into that state. And if you can get other people into that state, it's almost like you feel like you're drunk with somebody like that. I'm sure we've all had those conversations where you're with somebody who they just like get you into the state where you're open, you're honest, and you're able to have these high emotion, high experience conversations. And so how do we do that? Well, I didn't actually really think about that yet. But there's definitely a way to do it. So I think the underlying idea here is all these conversational topics don't matter as much if you don't have the underlying conversational strategy. And the other underlying conversational strategy is to lower their defenses, get them into a less inhibited state. We have our inhibitions because we want to protect our self-image for one. We want to be free from judgment. We don't want to say some dumb shit. We don't want to say something that's going to like make the other person think we're fucking a total dumbass. So I think one of the first, I think there are two key internal factors that need to be satisfied in order to effectively lower their inhibitions. The first is you have to come from a place of non-judgment. The second is you have to come from a place of curiosity. So a big part of these conversations where you're able to kind of dive deeper into the psychology of the individual, into their past life experiences, into their values, into their worldview, and into their personality, get them to a place where they're freely expressing their personality with less inhibitions, or in a more inhibited state. You've got to come at it from a place of non-judgment and a place of curiosity. So how do you do that? First off, when you're in conversation, you have to become aware of that internal voice. When you hear judgmental voice or judgmental words, thoughts, or ideas appear, you've got to get rid of them within, I would say, like 3 to 5 seconds. If you start judging somebody based on what they've said, some experience that they shared, for more than 3 to 5 seconds, they're going to catch on to that and they're going to close up a little bit because they're like, oh no, I fucked up. So you've got to come from that place. The best thing to do, oh right, this is what I was thinking. Okay, the best thing to do is, first off, you've got to be able to recognize, hey, that's a judgmental thought. I don't want to have judgmental thoughts about other people. It's like, you don't have to fucking commit your life to this person. You might want to be more judgmental to the people who you commit your life to, who you hang out with on a daily basis. But when you're getting to know somebody, and even when you've decided this is somebody worth like having in my life consistently, you don't have to come from a place of judgment. And in order to do that, what you have to do is allow those thoughts to come to your mind. When they come, recognize, okay, I don't want to come from this place, and then just let those thoughts pass. Don't like hold on to them. Just recognize that they're like coming from out there somewhere. You don't identify with them. You don't see them as true. You just see them as fleeting thoughts. One way to kind of rationalize this to yourself is to recognize your limited perspective. You have your past biases, you have, your preconceptions, you have your projections. They might say something, and to them it means something else, and to you it means something, and you project what you think it means onto them. And so then what you think it means is something worth judging them for. Whereas if you let go of those preconceptions, you can just assume, hey, maybe I don't fully understand what they mean by that. Or maybe they're explaining this experience that they had, and I'm projecting a similar experience I had onto it and thinking that they're a piece of shit because of it. You can recognize your limited perspective. You can recognize that, hey, if a judgmental thought is coming up, maybe that means that they are offering a fresh perspective on the world that I haven't heard. And because I'm human, I'm going to be a little bit afraid of that. Maybe it contradicts some of my own ideas. And I don't have to ascribe to it, but this can then trigger curiosity, because it's like, well, maybe I don't understand it fully, because obviously they believe in it for some reason, and maybe I can figure out at the very least why they believe in it, or why they're on board with this. And so you can sometimes use those judgments as a trigger for curiosity. But yeah, ultimately it's like you need to just accept people for who they are. I don't want to say just like see them as like all good, because that's just too hippie. But it's like, in some sense, you have to see them that way. You have to kind of make the assumption that they're just who they need to be for this time in their life. And I think when you make that assumption, you can come at it from a place of non-judgment. And then curiosity, I think it's just the more you have these kinds of conversations curiosity and openness is probably another quality where you have to be willing to embrace potentially new ideas, or willing to hear out experiences that might challenge some of your existing worldviews. And I think when you do that, you start to have these conversations that feel almost enlightening, that open your mind up to new possibilities, to new conceptions of reality and of life. And I think when you do that, it's like, you're just like, man, like life can be so interesting. People can be so interesting. And so a part of stimulating curiosity is just seeing the complexity in people, not oversimplifying people. I think a lot of times we hear a couple of key words or see a few key behaviors and we try to categorize people accordingly. that's like, that just crushes curiosity. And certainly there are ways to categorize people that have some utility, but even Carl Jung was kind of the founder of psychological categorizations, or maybe not the founder, but a revolutionary within the realm of psychological categorizations. And even he said these are just a tool to be used but not to be relied on, and they have no true bearing on reality. That's not a quote, that's just a general rough estimate of his perspective on it. And I mean, he did a shit ton of work on categorizing people psychologically, and he was saying don't rely on this shit. It's a rough estimation, and it's a useful tool for some general approaches. But every human is so unbelievably unique that it's just so fascinating. And I think when you really open yourself up to that perspective, you can stimulate that curiosity genuinely. And I think when you have those three qualities, maybe there are more, I don't know. I think when you have those qualities, these deeper, more complex conversations, these more emotional conversations, conversations where you start to learn more about the world, experience the world in a new way, broaden your perspective, and then they start to, I mean, I've had conversations like this where they've like told me like, holy shit, like I'm like talking about things about myself that I didn't even know about myself, but it's like they knew it anyway. It's like the conversation gave them an opportunity to explore their own psychology. And I mean, that's just fascinating. Man, words are hard sometimes. That's just a fascinating journey to go on, and it's a fun one to go on with somebody through their psychology. And sometimes you'll meet somebody who can do that back to you, and it's like, man, that creates some really deep relationships, and those are those long-lasting friendships that you'll carry through your whole life with. And then eventually it's like those are the kind of people who, when you reconnect, it's like you never said goodbye, right? It's just like it was back in the day when you were first hanging out. And those kinds of conversations, when you can break into them quickly, those are the kinds of conversations that build deep bonds fast. So it's like maybe you only know each other for a year, but it's like you get that really deep connection as if you'd known them your whole life. And those are valuable friendships. And it's like, why wouldn't you want more of those? So I think an exercise you can do to really develop this internal state is to convince yourself of these ideas, because I think that they're true ideas. And if you think that they're true ideas, or you want to have these kinds of relationships, or you want to have these kinds of interactions and conversations, and then the friendships that evolve from them, you have to be convinced that this is true, that this internal state, that being non-judgmental is better than being judgmental. And if you're not fully convinced that being non-judgmental is better than being judgmental, then when those judgmental thoughts come to mind, it's going to be harder to let them go. However, if you really reason to yourself and walk yourself through that thought process and convince yourself, hey, non-judgment is better than judgment, then when those thoughts come up, that it's like that it's almost like an algorithm, that mental program will play out instantaneously, and you'll be like, oh no, I don't want to be judgmental, I prefer non-judgment, that's better experience. And then those thoughts will just pass right by. And then meditation is a good exercise in presence, and a good exercise to actually practice the almost experience of allowing thoughts to pass through. And then in terms of curiosity and openness, I think it's a very similar thing. Meditate on experiences where you approached a conversation from a place of curiosity and you got some profound insight from it, or you were really intrigued by this individual that you had to that you got to have this conversation with. I need a drink of water. Anyway, whoa, getting over a sinus infection. So, guess that's gonna be on the internet now. Well, maybe, we'll see. This is a long ass video, but I mean, why not put it on the internet, Anyway, those are my thoughts on conversation. Try those exercises. I'm curious. I don't know. I mean, if anybody watches this, tell me down below, be like, hey, these are my thoughts, man. If you really like write out a very articulate and persuasive argument in favor of being non-judgmental, curious, and open, then, throw that, either if it's an article or you post down below, post it down below and as a comment, and be like, hey, this is why, that's the thing. There you go. And yeah, thank you for listening to my chit chat and my thoughts.